Giga Shanghai really is turning into Tesla's secret weapon because they have shifted Shanghai to become the global export factory. And I don't actually think that's because demand is weaker in China. I've seen some people floating that idea around there. I think that it just makes more sense for Tesla as now Giga Shanghai's production capacity has now gone above 450,000. It's coming up on the same production capacity as Fremont, and the margins there are much thicker. It's much cheaper to build vehicles there. They have access to CATL batteries, which are far cheaper, and because they built that factory from the ground up, it's much more efficient. If you've seen any videos on how the Model Y or Model 3 assembly process looks over there, it's amazing. So it just makes more sense for Tesla to use the cheaper to produce cars to export, because there's a lot of expense that goes towards shipping and import tariffs, and that's why we've seen some price reductions out of China and Australia and in Europe. But recently, Tesla has filed with the Chinese government that they want to start producing 5 more additional trims of the Model Y, which is a lot considering they're already offering 3 that are on the market: the standard range Model Y, dual motor long range, and of course performance. But now within these registrations, Tesla has also listed a long range rear wheel drive, which caught my attention immediately because currently Tesla is not accepting orders for a long range rear wheel drive Model Y anywhere, and we've seen Tesla have standard range Model Y just for the Chinese market and not offer it elsewhere, which I'm still a bit annoyed by, but it makes sense. And apparently there's 2 standard range options that they want to make. One of them might be a right-hand drive option, we don't know, but we do know one of them involves a imported motor versus a domestically built motor, which means I guess they have to be registered separately because one motor is being built at the Chinese plant, whereas one motor is being imported from somewhere else. But they're still, of course, all Tesla motors at the end of the day. And the other 2 are just a separate dual motor long range and a Model Y performance. My guess is these could be slightly varied versions depending on what demographic Tesla plans on shipping these to. They might have different guidelines about small things like either software or the computational side of what computers work on the inside, or it could simply just be right-hand drive options. We don't know exactly the differences, but just knowing that Tesla is actually registering with the Chinese government to make a long-range rear-wheel drive option gets me excited because it points to the idea that Tesla sees a future in that department. You know, Elon Musk was against having the standard range Model Y in the US just because the range was below 250 miles. It would be great if they could maybe ship over a bunch of lithium iron phosphate batteries for the Model Y that they could make in the United States, because people apparently were looking at the range numbers of the made in China standard range Model Y, and they said if you translated it to EPA, it would actually be over 250 miles, so the energy density and the weight savings of the Chinese made Model Y could actually allow the standard range model to be something Elon might be comfortable with. But it's totally possible that Giga Shanghai needs all the lithium iron phosphate they can, and Tesla would rather not sell, you know, a super low priced Model Y in the United States. So a long range rear wheel drive option coming back here would be, I think, the perfect scenario, especially with the ramping of Giga Texas. Once that is at volume production, it would make sense for them to produce dual motor options, performance and non-performance, and they have great range. But if Fremont still wants to mass produce Model Ys because they have a lot of capacity for it, they've got the casting press, but they just have to live with those dated 2170 cells. If they opt for a rear-wheel drive Model Y, then they could get substantially better range than what dual motor Model Ys are getting now, and probably be a lot cheaper than the 4680 Model Ys coming out of Texas. Maybe not to build, but still lower price at least than what they are today. So there's a lot of different things like the refreshed Model 3 and Chrome Delete and the HEPA filter included on the Model Y. A bunch of stuff that China actually does first, and I think that's because Tesla designed that factory from the ground up, so they made it more scalable and easy to swap parts out and easy to upgrade things when they want to. So if we're seeing China make these types of moves and they're willing to introduce these new models, I'm not sure if the Chinese market needs this many tiers. If they did launch the long-range rear-wheel drive over there, they would have 4 different Model Y trims to choose from, and who knows, maybe when Tesla builds the factory from the ground up, they can afford to have that type of extreme customization. You'd have a standard range Model Y, you'd have 2 long ranges, and then you'd have performance at the top. Compared to other options Tesla offers, that would be a very complicated lineup, but in the world of automotive space, there's been far more options than that in the past. We just know Tesla for being all about efficiencies and simplicity and not making the factory line too complicated, so it's interesting to see Giga Shanghai be willing to take on the challenge of making multiple different types of Model Y for different markets with imported and several versions of standard range, several versions of long range and performance. I can't wait to see what this ends up actually looking like, and I really do hope it means that we could see a rear-wheel drive long-range Model Y in the United States, hopefully by sometime next year. It's probably too much wishful thinking to assume this year, because I'm still under the belief that Giga Texas is going to be operational in producing customer vehicles by the end of this year, but because it's low volume, they're going to start with the performance trim, and that way they have healthy margins on those vehicles. But then my guess is sometime next year, maybe in the second quarter or third quarter, they're going to be ramping up 4680s enough at Giga Texas to start producing a long-range all-wheel drive Model Y that's not performance, so it's a lot cheaper, probably closer to $51,000 or $52,000, but the range will be well over 400 miles, and then Fremont will have this extra capacity to make another trim with 2170 cells, and whether it's the standard range Model Y coming back or perhaps a 350 mile range rear-wheel drive option, either would be really exciting, because I think the $40,000 Model Y was an astounding deal, and I know a ton of people that would have bought it even with the low range, and they were very upset when Tesla took it away. But simultaneously, I know there's a ton of people out there that would get the best efficiency, lowest weight Model Y possible, and 400 mile range is just too much. So if there was like a $45,000 or $46,000 starting price to get the Fremont Model Y, but its range was well over 300, I could still see a ton of people buying that. So feel free to let me know, what would you guys rather get? Would you want 4680 Model Ys even if they costed well over $50,000, or would you take the savings and buy a $45,000 Model Y or a standard range Model Y? As long as the range is over 200 or 300 miles, you're good. Feel free to let me know. Thank you all for watching. Hope you have an excellent rest of your day. Take care.